So this is a 1,000-piece pomegranate art puzzle. Uh, I love the pomegranates. I have a love-hate relationship with pomegranate, actually. The hate part comes from the fact that art can be a very, very difficult puzzle to speed puzzle because patterns are hard to see, colors can be hard to see, oil paintings are the worst, other than Jackson Pollock, which is the worst. But at the same time, the puzzles are beautiful when they're finished because they're often classic works of art. So a little bit of a love-hate relationship. Um, so this particular puzzle is 1,000 pieces. The biggest challenge for me in doing this is actually the space. So I'm doing this on a desk, and it is not a particularly spacious desk. So not visible in the video, but the desk actually has tiny little ridges, which are great in that your laptop doesn't slip and your coffee doesn't slip on this desk. Not great in terms of like your pieces don't glide as smoothly. And this was a puzzle I got from my local library where I'm their sort of volunteer puzzle curator. I had gotten it and was checking to make sure all the pieces were there. And so, the challenge was it had been done a few times, and so the piece fit was a little bit looser. So I wanted to be able to slide. I didn't want to pick up any, didn't want to pick up any pieces and just sort of watch them tumble onto the table. So I decided actually to start with the sky, which is not usually the best decision. A couple of reasons for that. One, I'm working with glare, and the sky was the easiest to see with the glare. The second was that because it was the top of the puzzle, I would be able to finish it and then push it up to the top of the desk and not worry about it anymore. I once tried to do a puzzle with those little gray and black things at the top, are wire hole cover-uppers. I once tried to do a puzzle without those in place and pushed a bunch of pieces through them. Not a good time. They're a little annoying because they're raised, and so they also stop the puzzle if I'm trying to push it up too far on the desk. But this is actually pretty nicely taking shape, in my opinion. So you can really start to see the outline of the mountain that I'm going to be building later. And I've also started some of the water that's going to go under that mountain just because as I'm pulling the sky, I'm pulling a lot of water pieces on accident. And so, I'm just sort of also putting them in. So starting to get a little bit of the mountain too that's going to be over the water actually built out. So this image has two guys. I assume they're men. They look like cowboys in a time when there weren't a lot of female cowboys. Um, riding their horses in this sort of western scene. The one disappointment when I did the border, I thought the sky was a higher proportion of the image than it actually was. I think sometimes I see things like sky and I'm like, oh, this must be like half the image. It's a sunset. False. It is not a sunset. This looks nothing like a sunset, in fact. So now just trying to look for what the next pattern is. Interestingly, I actually think I did pretty well time-wise on this puzzle because it had enough large chunks that I could pull and I didn't get distracted as much. I think sometimes when I'm working with smaller chunks, I kind of get excited and I'm like, oh, well, I see another chunk and I'll move on to it. Here, like, the chunks were pretty big and defined, and it was like glacier, water, purple mountain, sky. And so they were all big enough that I really sort of focused on them. And so you can see I'm not really jumping around as much as I usually do, which is good. I think one of my biggest weaknesses in puzzling is that I do jump around. And, it's made worse by the fact that I do casually puzzle quite a bit still. Not always training, obviously. And when I casually puzzle, I do jump around because that's fun and I want to feel like I'm putting pieces in and I get bored and I move on to a new section, rather than the focus of, no, I have to finish this. I'm like this at work too. Oh, a new project. Yay, a new one. Ooh, I don't like this project anymore. Maybe I'll go work on this new project. Ugh. This is why I would be a terrible accountant. Um, or surgeon. Really, any job that requires making sure your thing is 100% done. Um, so, back in puzzle world, um, what I'm doing now is I'm starting to see a lot of pieces that look like sort of, I'll call it snow and shadow. And I'm grabbing those pieces and trying to build them in. My goal here is that once I have that sort of snow and shadow, it'll connect to this big centerpiece, that I've been able to find that has this little bit of a lake and this sort of easy to see brown mountain. Once I can connect that in, it will really lower the number of chunks I have left to build. So it'll both be easier to sort of pick them out and, if necessary, to shape sort. A lot of the pieces that are left are all kind of the same darkish color. And the challenge is I'm also working with glare on my table. Um, so, being able to get the puzzle more framed out with fewer smaller chunks is going to be super helpful. So, yep, still slowly going. So, one of the challenges I'm starting to run into is there's a lot of similar looking colors, so a lot of greens and browns left now. So, where I can see some patterns, I'm building them, and otherwise just kind of moving on to where I can see them, for lack of a better way of putting it. I think right now, if I could give myself advice, it would be go try to do some of this mountain, this brown, or build out a little bit more of that bottom. Um, just kind of avoid those greens for a little bit longer. The greens aren't very apparent, they don't seem to be moving very quickly, and that might be a better thing to just shape sort. I hate shape sorting though, so you know. This tree was actually really helpful on the right hand side because it gave me something to build off of for all the rest of those green pieces. And so now I've gotten it down to like, okay, there's this like green patch in the left, there's this green patch in the middle, there's this green patch in the right. Okay. So yes, this would have been a very good time to shape sort. working with glare is definitely not helping. I find glare is the worst for me when I'm dealing with dark colored pieces that don't have like super distinctive patterns. I hit, I have glare on my table and I slow down. I'm literally like half the speed. It's good training because in competition you never know what kind of light you're gonna get. And so I kind of think of it as like training on hard mode. It's like how runners train with hills. Like you do hill sprints. I do glare sprints. Um, but it does make it sometimes a little bit less fun. I've had a few thousand piece puzzles that are sort of really dark, and I'm just like, screw this. I don't want to do this. Nobody wants to do this. So um, you can see I'm starting to opportunistically shape sort on the right hand side, which is a good call because this, especially with the glare, is going way more slowly. Beautiful, beautiful image though. Again, why I love pomegranates, even if they're not great to speed run. Boom, there we are. Beautiful puzzle.